opposed? Passes on a 5-0. Okay, I'd like to move to, are you all doing fine? You good?
We had an addendum that put these items 20 through 24 on at 9:30.
I've already mentioned those.
Okay.
They're coming further down on the agenda.
All right.
Is there something?
No, I just thought we were going to take care of them at 9.
The addendums are 20, they're numbered 20 to 24, so they'll be later. Okay, I'd like to move to item 12, a resolution approving reversion to acreage for lots 28 through 65 of La Cobra Mina, Unit 1. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Cobra Mina.
Okay, thank you. Deborah?
Good morning, Board. Deborah Mullen, Calaveras County Public Works. The public hearing and resolution before you today is in regard to a 65-lot residential subdivision in Copperopolis. La Cobra Mina was divided into 2 phases for construction. The first phase was comprised of 27 lots. That was completed, and homes built on many of those lots. The second phase, lots 28 through 65, was not completed. This proposal is a reversion to acreage for those lots, to combine those 38 lots into one. It will also vacate the road, public utility, and drainage easements created by the La Cobra Mina subdivision map in 2006. Central to this discussion is an agreement that was executed between the developer, Black Creek Ranch, and the county in 2006. And this agreement was for the developer to commit to completion of the improvements. Now, the regulations of the MAP Act allow deferment of those improvements by the developer having approved improvement plans and adequate surety in place to guarantee construction. And extensions, annual extensions of those agreements are typically granted. You saw one a week or 2 ago for Forest Meadows, and those go usually on a routine basis as long as the developer indicates that they are still committed to the project and adequate surety is in place for it. In this case, at the time the agreement was put into place, the developer had improvement plans and performance bond in the amount of $1,024,000. 2 years ago, when we spoke to them about extending their subdivision agreement, they indicated that they were unable to proceed with the subdivision. There were some financial and some legal difficulties, and we waited all this time hoping that that would work itself out and the project would move forward. As of last week, the developer indicated that he had no intention of completing this project, and it might have been clearer and simpler for you if he had moved to do the reversion at that time. That's generally what happens. The developer wants to have their bond released, but they don't want to go ahead with the project. So given the agreement that is in place, the county has 2 options. And on the staff report, you can see that at the top of page 2. The 2 possible outcomes are that the county complete the project or that it be reverted to acreage. And that the language for 5A, that the county complete the project, includes language for the county to use the proceeds from the bond to do this. And there's about a mile of roadway, and the lot's still to be prepared. Some rough grading was done originally, but no certifications were submitted for that work, so we don't really know if it was completed in accordance with the approved plans. Published reports indicate that the property is currently in foreclosure. The preliminary title report shows considerable debt associated with it. it might be unrealistic for the county to expect that the financial difficulties will be untangled and that a new owner would purchase the property and move forward with the construction. We're the county to construct this. And I don't think that we're really in a position to be able to do this, and there's no real guarantee that the bonding company will come forth with the funds, and it's pretty clear that the developer will not come forward with whatever additional funds are required to do this work. This is a public hearing. Notifications were mailed and published as required by state law, and we were contacted by various utility companies, agencies, individuals with an interest in the outcome of this proceeding. I haven't received any written input, but I believe several are here today to provide some input. So the recommendation for Public Works is that after consideration of input at this hearing, that the board resolve to revert lots 28 to 65 of La Coppermina to acreage. To do so, pursuant to state code, the board must make certain findings. The first finding is that the dedications to be vacated are unnecessary for present or prospective public purposes. And if you look at the area map, you can see that the roads in this subdivision do not provide any circulation benefit to any other properties adjacent, and they're not necessary for the first part, the lots 1 through 27. The second finding is that none of the required improvements have been made within 2 years from the date the final map was filed for recordation, or the time allowed by the subdivision agreement. The subdivision agreement has expired, and the improvements clearly have not been completed. The second part of the resolution is to direct us to process a claim against the bonding company simply for the costs of this proceeding, staff time, and time of the county surveyor who prepared the map. And there's a possibility, Calvary's telephone contacted us with a concern that their initial investment in this project is now, could be a loss. And having looked at the subdivision agreement again, there is reference to utilities. We'll have to look at the improvement plans to see whether their construction was included as the project that was secured by the bond. And so we can see, and the action today, if we do revert this to acreage, would not preclude a new owner from seeking the same entitlements to subdivide. If they were to submit a map to subdivide in the same confirmation that the current one is, it might move a little quicker. A lot of the studies have been done. But I think that leaving it to rest is not really an option. And I'd be happy to be...
Does any of the board members have any questions or comments to Deborah this time?
Well, yes, Deborah, your staff report is quite clear and concise that you're only citing 2 options. However, for the last 2 years, we've been exercising an option, in my mind, of doing nothing. And I'm until I hear compelling reasons that we should move forward and essentially wipe out all these the advantages of the improvements that have been made, I'm more inclined to say that we should continue to do nothing until we have more information. I'd want to know why that's a terrible option to take. I'm very interested to hear if there's a person from the lender, if there's a person here that I know Mr. Rich is a resident in the phase 1 of this subdivision. I think that my goodness, it just makes my head spin to think about the possibility of having an affirmative vote to do what you've asked us to do here, and all the wealth that has been invested in this project would evaporate. I'm not an advocate of doing that unless I hear compelling reasons why I should. So that's there was a communication over the weekend that you apparently were working yesterday, but you talk about the Wolin and Sons have a claim against this project of, I don't know, upwards of, what was it, $350,000 or something?
Not quite, but close. It is $272,000. So they were never paid for the grading, nor was the engineer paid for processing. So we have no engineer certification.
But the dilemma that this creates for me is that this we're talking about having it revert to a single parcel of land. The parcel of land as it currently exists is not a meadow. I mean, it has been graded substantially in conformance, I'm sure, to the plans. Otherwise, Wolin wouldn't be seeking to be paid for the work. I think that the best interest of this county and some future buyer is to let sleeping dogs lie for at least a little bit until we have that some future determination on who's going to own this land. I feel a compelling. It's not an urgency necessarily, but I just think that the prudent thing to do here would be for the county to recognize that this is not going to go back to grazing land, that somebody's going to come along eventually and develop this project out and hopefully the exact way that it was designed. It's a lovely subdivision. The houses that have been built there, it's really, who could have foreseen that the economic climate was going to collapse? So I'm very fearful of rushing in to do what you've asked us to do here, and because a lot of people are going to be hurt. The way it's been explained to me that there was a joint trench. The telephone company is one utility that has at least rudimentary facilities in there. I think there's a representative from CCWD here. Were you going to talk about this?
Not necessarily.
Okay. But I'd like to ask you a question later when the time comes. But
I can answer to that to a certain extent. I agree. It's unfortunate. The danger of letting this sleeping dog lie is that once any part or all of the property has sold and ownership changes, then under the state code, the option to revert to acreage goes away, and we no longer can do that. And then we're stuck with whatever happens next. The county will have no leverage to cause the new owner to construct any of the improvements. The subdivision agreement does not transfer to a new owner.
There would be an overwhelming urgency on the part of a new owner to develop it exactly the same way that this old application was made. At least that's my opinion, because otherwise you would not be able to, or the new owner would not be able to take advantage of any of the environmental work that was done. I mean, it's conceivable that it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and 3 to 5 years of delay. That if we reject this thing today, take it back to acreage today, and somebody bought it tomorrow, it would be 5 years before they'd have an approved subdivision map. Yes, Janice.
Hi, Janice Elliott, County Council. I saw the look. Actually, the subdivision improvement agreement does go with the land, not the subdivider. However, it does have a term on it. And once that term expires, we no longer have any rights under the subdivision improvement agreement, and arguably no more rights to attach the security We just had a similar situation where we had to sue on some security to cause a subdivider to complete the improvements because they had already sold one of the parcels. The bank refused to sue to provide the security, so we were looking at pretty extended litigation. However, the bank put pressure on the subdivider, and the subdivider completed those improvements, thank goodness, because then the bank went out of business. So the risk here is that if the improvement agreement expires and there's nobody to, at this point, extend it with the county, then we may be on the hook for completing those improvements if we are requested to do that by somebody who has an interest in those improvements, and that interest accrues to all of those in the previous phase of the subdivision. So there is a risk to the county here. That money would come out of the county's pocket. That is why Public Works is recommending that you revert to acreage at this point in time, because there's nobody there at this point to extend the subdivision improvement agreement. So if you don't have a subdivision improvement agreement and somebody else buys the property, the only thing we have left is to sue them under the conditions of approval. And even then, that would be a tough call, because we did allow them under the MAP Act to record the final map. The intent of the MAP Act is to have a term on when they complete the improvements, and if they don't complete the improvements, the county is supposed to complete those improvements. So I don't know exactly what the date is on this current subdivision improvement agreement, but that is our sleeping dog's cutoff date at this point. Any other questions?
So what you're telling me is that there's no other possibility for the county. We couldn't get, if we had a couple of weeks to think about this, that we couldn't get creative and impose some sort of a legal solution to this problem of vulnerability, financial liability. I don't know, Janice, please understand. I think that there's a good amount of work that Deborah and the department has done, and I certainly am interested in protecting the county. But this supervisor doesn't want to further perpetuate the belief that among the residents and developers and stuff that this county is against development or it's dragging its feet. I mean, this would be proof positive that once something has been approved, that we're just going to seize the opportunity to shoot it in the head and not look at ways that we might be able to preserve the wealth that's been created there. It certainly goes against the grain for me.
Well, again, I don't know the date on the improvement agreement. I'd have to defer to Public Works, and all I can tell you is the MAP Act doesn't take into account the economy. There's nothing I can do about what the MAP Act says, and I'm just telling you that that's your decision, but that's the potential risk of letting the subdivision improvement agreement expire. If the property gets sold to someone who has an intent to subdivide, we can always pursue extending the subdivision improvement agreement with the new owner, but I can't guarantee that. So.
Well, let me ask you, is there someone here today from the Umpqua Bank? It's my understanding, based on conversations that I've had with Deborah, is that this property is scheduled for foreclosure sale on the 21st of this month out on the courthouse steps.
That's my information also.
Okay, so is there anything in your mind that would put the county in any more peril if we waited to see what happens on that date?
The only downside to that potential is, and I don't have any information about the foreclosure sale, but Deborah is correct that if one parcel is sold, we lose the right to revert to acreage. And it may be they're selling it as a lot. I don't know. I don't have any information on that. And it may be nobody buys it. That's also a big potential, too. So I can't answer that because I don't know what's going to happen. And I also, again, I don't know what the date. What is the date on the improvement?
I believe it's 2008.
2008? Well, we already have an issue then. So
the subdivision improvement agreement has expired.
Has already expired. Yeah. So at this point, it would simply be if a new developer bought it and wanted to keep the final map alive, that would probably be the only thing we would have to negotiate with at this point. that they would have to enter into a new subdivision improvement agreement and post new security. Technically speaking, the MAP Act says you're supposed to only have a 1-year improvement agreement with a short extension thereafter. So we're already well beyond the normal timeline due to the economy. So.
Okay, well, other supervisors may want to weigh in on this, and certainly there are people that are wanting to
Ms. Elliott?
talk.
Just a minute. Supervisor Walensky.
Sorry to keep you, but I just had one simple question. The bond that's provided to assure the completion of this under a improvement agreement, which has expired, is now may be subject to the foreclosure process and even potentially bankruptcy. I'm wondering what that bond's encumbrances are potentially. Are there other draws on it? Could this be part of litigation? And is there a timeliness issue in terms of our draw?
I've not reviewed the actual bond language. Generally speaking, depending on what it says, if it says it's good until the county accepts the completed improvements, then you probably could make a demand on payment. If they don't pay it, then you need to go to court, which we've done in the past. If it doesn't have that language in it, then the security companies generally argue that it's only as good as the subdivision improvement agreement, which means it may already be gone. It is posted for the county's labor and material bond. I don't believe that any other mechanics liens would attach to that particular bonding. Their mechanism is to go to court. And my understanding, and it's only based on what I've been provided by Public Works, I have not access to court files, is this property is not in personal bankruptcy by the current landowners, but there is a bankruptcy proceeding related to these particular owners through the mortgage company that they created to lend themselves the money. So as long as it's not in bankruptcy, you have the right to revert. If it ever becomes part of a bankruptcy estate, you have to go to court to get a relief from the stay.
Okay. Well, I think I've heard enough.
Are there any public comments or questions on this?
So my understanding that there has actually been a map filed on this,
Yeah, it's filed and approved.
then on that map, then the person that loaned the money on has signed that map along with the clerk on that. Am I correct?
I'm not clear of your question.
Well, I've done subdivisions. When I get a subdivision, if I file a subdivision, I get approval from you, then you authorize the clerk to sign that map. Then you also have the the surveyor's office sign it. My surveyor signs it, and I sign on it. That's how I've always done it in the past. Now, if Umpqua is a loaner on that, and they sign that map, and it's recorded, and you guys approve 30 or how many lot subdivisions, now you're going to go ahead, axe that, and let the bank foreclose on one lot instead of how many lots? Now, I'm not a real bright man, so I would have Mr. Foley probably filing a thing in court against the county if that happened, if you guys did that to me. So I sort of agree with Russ a lot on this, because you're rushing into something that the bank is getting ready to take something that they went into good faith with the county. And not only that, but I imagine CCW's me really upset because they put the improvements in along with the telephone company and everyone else for these right-of-ways, and you're going to vacate the right-of-ways without even notifying them or letting them have input on it?
No, the easements are not being vacated.
Okay.
Yeah, they are.
But I still would be concerned.
Are they?
Certain ones are, and certain ones are
Yeah,
not.
so I mean, it's just,
Deborah, could you please?
there's a lot of concerns I have. I think you're putting the county in harm's way to rush into something for what? They're foreclosing this month.
Yeah.
I think it's just.
Could you explain to Mr. Platt? Sorry, that's so fine. No.
I'm not
If
really
you have more
clear on
questions,
everything
absolutely.
that Mr. Clapp asked. I did understand Marita's question about the easements. The easements that were created by the map in 2006 are proposed to be vacated, but certain other easements were deeded by other instruments. CCWD has easements, and there are Corps of Engineers, there's open space. Those we have no authority to touch. Those stay intact. But only those that are related to the parcels themselves the roads and the PUE that runs concurrent with the roads are proposed to be vacated.
Okay. And was the map, recording of the map signed by
Yes.
the developer or by the bank?
The developer. It was the original map signed by the partners of Black Creek Ranch, David Dilson and James Ellis.
And there's no signature on there from the lender?
No.
Clyde, did you have another question that you wanted?
Do you want to look at it?
You know, when you filed this, then you had the deed and stuff from them where it showed it's free and clear then,
All title,
Okay.
course.
And so who was the title, who insured the title policy on it?
this was Sterling, I believe.
Sterling's out of business now?
Correct, but
So it's on us?
we have title report from Placer Title, and we have the most recent one as of last week to confirm that no parcels have been sold. And I want to mention also that the foreclosure is for all of these parcels in one lump, plus I believe 10 others that were created in Phase 1. So the foreclosure sale is for all of it at once, not for an individual.
And at least one of the parcels in Phase 1 has a home on it
That one is handled separately.
separately? Okay.
Clyde, did you have any other questions or need
No,
clarification?
it's just the Placer is probably doing the foreclosure, so they'll post title insurance on for the foreclosure.
Madam Chair, you might
Good morning.
want to clarify that the public hearing is open on this now. So.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay, sorry.
My name is Ed Rich. I reside at 338 Paseo Verde Drive. I am an elected director of the La Cobramina Homeowners Association, Phase 1. There were approximately 13 houses. Only one is left right now for foreclosure. All the other ones have sold. We personally came up with $5,000 and took 1 year with attorneys to reinstate the Homeowners Association with two objectives in mind. One, the access to Phase 2 goes through Paseo Verde Drive. They're private streets. So we wanted to protect ourselves from liability. I particularly want to thank the Sheriff's Department from turning the de facto bike trail into now of a subdivision. The second issue was we're concerned that there be adequate controls on whoever takes the vacant lots, and particularly Phase 2, is that they put a project in there in keeping with the value and of the homes that are in Phase 1. You know, our nightmare, and it's more in Phase 2, is somebody will come in there and put a trailer park or something like that in terms of the road densities or whatever. I'm not sure, we haven't researched this. Your Public Works Department threw out a little zinger that I'm not sure I was aware of, because we've been talking regularly to the bank. Some of our homeowners in Phase 1 are negotiating right now to buy vacant lots from the bank. They have told us they will entertain no offers on Phase 2 until approximately 2 years. Okay? In terms of Phase 2, if it's going on the auction block, Supervisor Thomas is correct. This is not raw land. These are manufactured sites. Every one of them has sewer to it, and they have water to it. I would now caution you, one of the reasons perhaps, aside from the economy, that the subdivision went upside down, if you want to see piles of rock go up to the end of Phase 2, it is solid rock. I have to use a jackhammer to plant a bush. I'm up to $2,000 in topsoil just to have a lawn. Okay? So what I'm suggesting to you is when you talk about it reverting to a single lot, I can't, and our homeowners, we have a directors meeting on the 17th. It's our first one. They only wanted to give input. Our concerns in adjacent project would be, one, the original intent was that was going to use our roads, and so if it's going to use our roads, whoever comes in there has to respect that in terms of the number of units. I tend to find that when things are wholesaled or go through foreclosure, you get things for 50 cents on the dollar at the most. So a person, when you talk about the investment in there, and they are expensive lots from the standpoint of there's sewer, there's water, and they're graded, they're rough graded, and they are very rocky, is that somebody's probably going to want to use those. But I don't know if they're going to say, well, let's put 2 houses on a lot, because the average lot is an acre to an acre and a half. They're pretty sizable. But when that person, whoever the new owner is, comes to the county, they're going to come in to change that, because they're going to come in with a plan that they felt would work on it, because the person wouldn't buy it unless they want to do it. They tend not to buy what somebody else tried and it didn't work. They're going to try to work with the land, whatever it is. I do not know legally what is the best position from the standpoint of our concerns being aired at the appropriate time, because I think whoever buys it is going to come in to you. And I thought this gentleman had an interesting point. If you turn around and say, that's one lot, so therefore, I don't know how many acres is under that zoning, you could put it on 5 houses and it's approved for 20 houses, that's an issue. But the point is that person's going to come in and say, this is what I think will make it work. And from our homeowners association, all we want at that time is to be able to be involved in the process, to come in and ask the question about the roads, and most importantly, the question about the quality of the home, just so it's in keeping with the thing. But the other one sits there, and remember, I sat on the Planning Commission, and I believe that every development is market-driven and it's relevant from the time period from which they're doing it. And there gets to be a point, we had plans that would come in that were 20 years old. The person would come in and just do $300 worth of stuff to say, I'm working on it. Well, in 20 years, the plan you dreamt up 30 years ago probably isn't market relative. Whoever buys that, and if it goes through foreclosure, I'd rather see it go to a person on a wholesale basis that's going to come in and plan the whole thing as a habit, split up. They're going to come in and say, we want these changes. And I think when that happens, they've got to come back to the county. They've got to modify that plan, because the likelihood that they're going to use it as is probably, remote. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rich.
Your hair has a beautiful sheen to it. Are you drinking olive oil regularly or something?
I have.
I just noticed that from the audience. There's a little glow off your head.
It's that dipping oil that I buy by the case.
Thank you.
It's actually a result of getting a week without a board meeting.
Gary, that should be such an appointment with you on your subdivision, because you guys had your roads and stuff in front, and all the back part went in foreclosure, and I picked up 4 of them. That's the reason I know it. And then now you have 2 road departments, and they're fighting with each other and squabbling, because the second phase didn't quite do what the first phase was going to do. So the gentleman has a good point, and if I picked up property up on foreclosure, I can guarantee you with the new general plans you guys go in there, he is going to have a bunch of apartments behind him, because I'll go as high density as I possibly can with sewer and water. So I mean, these people are going to get buried if they're in the first phase and you do the second phase, because that's exactly what happened in Valley Hill Estates. Thank you.
Joe Kelly. Mr. Thomas, or Supervisor Thomas asked if Umpqua Bank was here. Has Umpqua Bank been notified of this? Okay. Now, one of my concerns is if you take this and go the route being suggested by Public Works, can you then put stipulations on that, either through a zoning or, the other part too, to say that it has to remain in that configuration so that it cannot come under and change and harm the first phase people? Because if it does go to sustainable community ideas, it will be hurt. The first people will be, and they'll be regretting it ever since. At least that's what I see, to take and put something of single families there and then have a high density on the second phase, which might come about, as Clyde stated. So there's another thought, if it can be done, if you're going to do that. I think taking it out of and putting it back to one lot it's detrimental, in the respect that developers all over the state of California are going broke. San Luis Obispo's biggest developers, and there's a lot of them down there, are going broke. They're being sued, they're upside down, they're losing their properties. So anything you can do that will benefit, and I think keeping that as a project somehow legally through Janice's research or whatever she can do to provide you with the information that would keep that way, provides a benefit to this county. That when somebody does come along, yes, he might buy it 50 cents on the dollar, but that property is probably less, actually. But with all the improvements there, that was my other concern, is were the improvements in. That's why I would say leave it as it is, and especially with all the grading improvements, leave it. Benefit the county. It's going to benefit the county in the near term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Are there any other comments or questions on this? I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back to the board for any clarification, questions, and/or action. Where's Deborah? Oh. I thought you were running away from us. I believe you mentioned that sometimes the developer does this and reverts it. Do you know why they didn't do that in this case, since they saw this coming? So their bond's still out there?
Yes. I think it has to do with the magnitude of the difficulties that the owners find themselves in, the legal and the financial. I think that I only spoke to Mr. Ellis, and I had the impression that he really wanted and expected the county to come in and finish the project and let him off the hook on it. But he did not ever mention reversion to acreage until our conversation last week, when he said he did not oppose it, but he would not say that he is in favor of it either. He was just, he would not elaborate.
And the financial institution in Quabra said it was, have they made any comment on this, on whether...
Almost the same. He said, I spoke to a representative from Umpqua last week, and he was aware of it, and he said that he would come to the meeting today, but he would not be speaking on behalf of the bank.
Okay.
So maybe he's here.
So as I understand it, really there is no option for us to do nothing.
That's my understanding from council.
And the utilities that are in, that is up to them to seek their own recourse for that. And if we do nothing, it still doesn't change anything for the utilities.
It's been a bad investment all around, and yes, there's potential for loss, potential for tax delinquency. I see Lynn is here. The taxes are delinquent on this property.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board on this?
If Janice could come back up again, I'd like to ask her a couple questions. I was trying to listen carefully to what you were saying, Janice, that you made reference to a couple of times to things that were not known, that you didn't have knowledge of certain elements. Is there any pitfall or danger for the county to just, say, for instance, if I made a motion to continue this until a date certain, would be hopefully after the 21st, so that would give you an opportunity to do a little bit of research about how the county might protect itself in this instance, how we might be able to preserve some value for Umpqua or some future owner without putting ourselves in peril. it just, I'm beating this idea to death, but my nature is not to destroy, with a vote, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of value. I'm just not built that way. So, is there any danger in postponing a vote on this?
Well, no. Let me answer it this way: is we don't have a valid improvement agreement at this point, which was the unknown that I didn't know. At this point, you basically, if you do nothing, which you have the right to do, and a new developer purchases the property, then Mr. Rich is pretty correct that generally speaking they would come in and tweak the project, which would require additional county review. Depending on how extent it was, it could even be a new tentative map with a whole approval process, and at that point we would be back to square one. However, if a developer does purchase the property without a subdivision improvement agreement in place, then we are basically either hoping that they'd enter into a new subdivision improvement agreement or hoping that they would comply with the conditions of approval, and if not, then you would need to be prepared to go to court to enforce those conditions of approval because the security would no longer be available. There is no mechanism available, as suggested by the public, to revert to acreage with some sort of condition on it. You are basically putting the property back at square one, and a new map would have to be processed on that property. With respect to it being one parcel, under our current requirements, you could have one house and one accessory dwelling. I don't know whether anybody would do that, because if the infrastructure is in place, it seems to me it would make more sense to just process a map and do a new development. At that point, Phase 1 would have the ability to participate in the public hearings on that new map. So if you do nothing, then the only exposure you have is if one parcel sold, then we lose the ability to revert to acreage. That's the risk of doing that. So.
Well, but how could, I heard reference to that Placer Title is involved in this. How could a sale be consummated on a lot, one of those 37 lots? How could it be closed, an escrow opened and closed without legal access?
Well, I can't speak for what might happen. I've seen many things happen over my years here. I would suggest that if the resolution is approved, to be recorded in the title to give notice to any future owners that there's an issue with this property. All that's required under the MAP Act for this hearing is notice and the opportunity to be heard, and we provided that to all of the people who have liens on the property. If they don't come up and speak at the podium here, they've not failed to exhaust their administrative remedies on the issue. So practically speaking, that's a different issue as opposed to the legal ramifications. So that's within your purview to decide whether or not that would happen. And that's certainly an option available to the board. If they want to take no action, then we see what happens with the property.
Well, a motion to continue this until after the 21st isn't exactly no action. I think that's to further the objectives, I think the worthwhile objectives of this county, that's a very positive thing to do, to wait until we have more information. In that time, I would aggressively, or in the time in between, I would aggressively pursue to get more information from Umpqua, and I'd like to get my hands around the situation more adequately than I have right now. So. Anyway, at this time, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we continue this item until some future meeting after the 21st of September.
I have a motion from Supervisor Thomas to postpone this for 2 weeks. Continue. Thank you, Supervisor.
I'm here to mentor you, Marita.
Do I have a second on that? Okay. Motion dies for lack of a second. Janice did bring something up. If there are any public utilities or agencies that would like to, I will open the public comment for them.
Wait a minute, Janice.
So they would have the opportunity.
They have the opportunity.
I'm Steve Hutchings, District Engineer for CCWD. Just to make things clear, we do have an existing sewer trunk line that cuts through this unit, and that easement is under a separate instrument, so it's not tied to this subdivision. There are new water and sewer lines for the new subdivision that have been constructed, and they do connect to our existing system. Not knowing what's going to happen with this subdivision, our intent is to physically disconnect those water lines from our existing system to prevent any accidental water line leaks or sewer inflows. Just want to make that clear.
Okay. How was that paid for?
The developer paid.
The developer paid for that, so you're not...
Yeah, we're not.
Anything on that. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other...
I have one question for Mr. Hutchings. If you say that you're going to go out and disconnect those lines, they will stay full of water for, who knows how long.
Right.
Will that render them to be useless after a while, or can they be flushed out?
No, they can. A new developer can come in and reconnect and test it and disinfect and all that stuff.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other agencies or utilities that would like to speak? Oh, and our tax collector, yes.
She's going to come forward and bid on this project.
Yeah, right. Lynette Norfolk, Treasurer Tax Collector. Just to clarify, Deborah alluded to it, that there are delinquent taxes, which they are, from 2008. So irregardless of whether this turns into one large parcel that we put all the delinquencies into, or whether they remain as parcels separate, and July 1st of 2013, it will be subject to public auction. Even the foreclosure sale would be subject to whoever got it would have to pay up those back taxes ultimately to keep it from sale. So I just wanted to go on the record for that clarification. But tax-wise, dollar-wise, it's minimal according to some of the figures that have been turned around here, but including an estimate of this year's taxes on the 38 parcels, it's about $60,000. So, any questions? I don't think that helps or hinders the situation here, but it may clarify what was stated. So,
thank you. Ms. Norfolk. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment period again and bring it back to the board. There was a motion that died for lack of a second. Is there another motion on this?
I have a question for Janice first. Janice, my concern is any liability that the county might assume. And as I understood your comments, what you're saying is if one lot is sold out of Phase 2, then the county, because the subdivision map has expired, would be responsible for finishing all the improvements in Phase 2. Is that correct?
That's a potential. That's a potential risk, yes.
If
a new subdivider does not purchase the property and either complete, if you revert to acreage, they'd have to process a new map, and since there is infrastructure in the place, it's likely that would happen with that property. But if at some point at time in the future that somebody who's entitled to the benefit of those improvements threatens the county with a lawsuit, then we would either litigate it in court or we would have to complete the improvements.
Okay, so it comes to the 21st, and this property goes to auction in the morning, and somebody buys it, a developer buys it, sells a lot in the afternoon to whomever, one lot.
For $1.
For $1, doesn't matter.
It has happened.
To his son, to his daughter, just to secure Phase 2. At that point, what happens at that point? Does the county then, because he has sold one lot in the afternoon of the 21st, become I mean, suppose the developer says, well, I'm going to sell one lot. I secure Phase 2, and I'm just going to sell out Phase 2 the way it's configured. I mean, I'm buying it cheap. I'm just going to sell it out. What risk then is there to the county?
Well, at that point in time, if the developer doesn't complete the improvements, we probably wouldn't issue building permits on those lots. So at that point, we just have to wait and see what the purchasers of the property did, but at some point in time, if they want to build on that property, they're going to say, why aren't the improvements completed? You, the county, allowed them to file record a final map, and you said you would make them complete the improvements. And so there is some potential risk that they could, request the county to complete those improvements. We're in an area that we've never had to do before, so I can't give you certainty on what might happen here, but there is a risk to the county of that.
That would be substantial. I mean, that would
That is exactly what just happened to us this year.
This wouldn't be $10,000 or $15,000. This could be hundreds of thousands.
Right. We had a threat of litigation from one person who bought a parcel off a final map. It's a much smaller map, but the improvements were still $750,000. But for the bank putting pressure on the subdivider, we could have been on the hook for completing those improvements.
And if we were required to make those improvements, we wouldn't have any recourse for recouping that cost.
Well, I can't answer with certainty because we would obviously try to go to court to collect from the new owner, but it's not
now
a
you're
clean...
talking years and probably $100,000 for
It's
attorney's
expensive,
costs.
yes. Yes.
Okay, if we do the reversion, and this goes then to one lot, and now somebody buys it on the courthouse on the 21st, and it's now one lot. If they wish to develop it, they could basically submit the same development plan, could they not?
Yes.
And have it processed. Would the environmental reviews and those kind of reviews have to be done over again, or would the basic entitlements would he be able to assume those basic entitlements?
A new map would be subject to CEQA. It would be up to the planning department to review the original document. This is an old map.
Okay.
So it's likely that there would be new requirements on it. It would be circulated for public review and comment. It would be just like a new project. The only difference is that there's disturbance on the ground, which would take into account what the current baseline is for environmental review. There is infrastructure in place. It's not completed. I don't know whether the current conditions of approval are our current requirements, but the new map would have to comply with anything that's current.
Okay, but he could capture much of what's been done.
Well, obviously there's infrastructure in place. That's a substantial cost right there, yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think in the interest of just protecting the county, and it doesn't prevent this from being developed in the future, it seems to me that we should go ahead with the what's it called, revision or
Reversion.
Reversion. Excuse me, the reversion, because I'm not comfortable having the county be out there with hundreds of thousands of dollars and improvements that we may or may not be liable for, and that would only be determined after a very expensive court fight. I don't really want to put us in that position. So if you're looking for a motion and there's no other comment, then I would move as recommended, the resolution approving reversion to acreage for lots 28 through 65 of La Cobra Minya Unit 1.
I'll second the motion.
This is really for Unit 2, Deborah?
It's all Unit 1. There is no Unit 2.
It's
property-
Phase 1, Phase 2.
It's construction phase. They're not formal planning phases, but it was the division of
So
construction.
do you want the resolution to be modified to say Phase 2?
It does say phase 2.
That says Unit 1 up here.
It is
It's all
Unit
Unit
1.
1, but there's phase...
It's phase 2 of Unit 1.
The second window.
It's lots 28 through 65.
So you want to leave it as is, Unit 1, in the resolution? That's fine. I just want to make it
Where are you looking,
clear,
Meredith?
just in the title of the resolution. I know...
Oh, yes,
what
lots 28 through 65 of Unit 1. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. A motion, I have a second. Any further comments from the board?
Just one. The discussion about the atmosphere about development and subdivision in this county has caused a great deal of comment even in this rather narrow moment, but I want it clear. I'm going to vote for this motion, but I also am committed. I voted for this original entitlement and would do so again with a responsible owner. And I would certainly hope that that message would be clear to the people in the room who have an interest in the property, that this is not a vote taken to discourage responsible development of the remainder of this subdivision. Rather, as Supervisor Tryon indicated, the purpose of the motion is to protect the county from great expense and liability at a time where we simply can't afford it. So that's the basis for my position.
I concur with those comments.
I'm also voting in support. I spent some time this weekend communicating with Deborah on these issues. I was hoping we could at least keep the parcels as they were recorded, but it seems to be an all or nothing. I appreciate what Supervisor Thomas is saying. I don't see us having...
What the rest would like to see happen will happen. It's just going to be the process it goes through. It's going to have to come back and submit a new map. I mean, the infrastructure's all there. You would think if the values, because of the auction and the bankruptcy, come down to where their market values in today's market, that then you would think the development would go forward, or at least I would think so. But you're going to have to revise the whole cost structure of that development.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments for the board, I will call for the question. All those in favor, it's with the board now, sorry. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Passes on a 4-1. Supervisor Thomas in the negative. Thank you. I'd like to move, is everyone fine? Do you want a 5-minute recess?
I could use it.
5-minute recess. Great.
Well, where are we?
We're on item 13, a minute order approving the extension of lease agreement with CAL FIRE. We do this for you and you do this for us, right?
Good morning.
Mr. Hawkins, please.
From the Administrative Office. Before you is the continuation of a long-standing lease agreement with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. I think the agreements go back 40-plus years. I found in microfiche in 1935 the first reference to a forest fire ranger in Calaveras County. So the county's had a long-standing relationship with CAL FIRE. This agreement goes back many